This is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and today's project is for the Elizabeth Craft Designs Frame It Designers Challenge. And I made this fun vintage airplane Shadowbox using the Flying High die set and then this Happy Frame XL die from Modus Scrap that are both from Elizabeth Craft Designs. So you're going to cut out 4 pieces of that Happy Frame XL die out of rich black cardstock, and then the die scores lines into it, and so you just need to go along and fold the lines. So just be a little bit careful, and you're just going to keep folding them towards each other. So you're making mountain folds. So the fold goes up, the paper goes down, and you're going to fold all, I think there's 4 lines, yeah, and then it kind of creates I call it a rectangular tube, basically, shape like so. And you do that with all 4 of the sides. And then to adhere them together, I'm going to lay the long side down on the tabletop and then fold the shorter end over with like its adjacent skinny edge next to it. And then I'm putting a 10mm clear double-sided adhesive tape on the shorter edge, just the shorter edge, so not the skinny edge next to it, just the larger short edge. And I'm just trying to get as much coverage on the tape as I can, so I'm trimming off any edges on the tape that's running over. And then I'm going to fold the short edge over and then remove the backing off the tape and then fold the long side down on top of it. So then you get a perfect match. Just make sure your edge is straight on the straight side and do that with all 4 of those pieces. So now we're going to assemble the frame. So I'm using liquid glue for this. And sorry, my dog is jingling. And so this is Kids' Choice glue. I usually use it for flowers with the Susan's Gardens flower dies, but it works great for this. So I'm putting the glue on the inside edges of what I'm calling the triangular end. So you want to coat the whole end, and then you feed the solid end of the second frame piece into that triangular end, and then hold it at a 90-degree angle until the glue sets up. Probably about like 30 seconds to maybe a minute at the most. Do the exact same thing again on the third side. So just hold it a little bit until the adhesive size. And then the last end is probably the trickiest one, but it's really not that tricky. So you're going to, again, put the glue on the inside edges of the triangular, inside faces, I guess, of the triangular ends. And then you're going to feed the one loose end onto the attached solid end, and then the solid end on the loose piece into the attached triangular end. Hopefully that makes sense. You'll see me do it right here. So there you go, and there you go. And just fit them together and then kind of hold that in place. And I found that especially on this one, it was easiest to hold it in place by like leaning it up and then just kind of holding the corners together. And then just set it aside to dry completely. So now I've got a piece of 100-pound white soft finish cardstock, and it's cut to 8.5 by 8.5, and I'm taking a makeup sponge and I'm smooshing on some Distress Oxide. So I'm using mostly Salty Ocean, which is the blue shade, and then Broken China is a little bit more green. And so what I'm doing is I'm making a sky background. So the brighter blue of the Salty Ocean is better for that. So I did add a little bit of Broken China here and there just for some color variation, but not too much. And you can see how textural it gets, like the makeup sponge really kind of leaves a lot of smudge marks, but that didn't bother me. I kind of wanted it to be a little bit mottled looking, and you can go over it to sort of blend a lot of that out, but I didn't really mind. I kind of wanted it to be a little bit mottled looking, have some dimension to it. And then when I spray it with water here, which I'll do in a second, it really doesn't matter. You'll see. So I'm spraying it with my Distress sprayer, and then I'm blotting the water off with a paper towel, and I'll spray it 3 times and do the same thing. And you can see it's going to really not matter that the background is kind of textural and mottled. And so just set that aside to dry. Okay, so here's the kind of fun but sort of complicated part. So this is the inside piece after it's been die cut out from the Flying High die set. So there's an outer circle and an inner piece. So we're only using the inner piece, and you're going to cut 4 of these. So I have cut these pieces of 85-pound white soft finish cardstock to 6 inches by 6.5 inches. And you want to line up the die as closely between each cut panel as you can. So what I did was I lined up a previous piece and then I set the die down as I pulled that out, and I'm just checking to make sure it's centered on that white panel, so it's 1 inch away from each side on the vertical sides and 3/4 of an inch away from the sides on the horizontal sides. And now you're just going to weed this out, but there are a few pieces that you need to pull out and keep to the side that we're going to add in, and they're detailed pieces on the wings, and then there's a curved piece on the like side of the airplane. So right now, this is probably going a little bit too fast for you to figure out which ones exactly I'm using, but in a second I will slow it down and show you exactly which pieces I am pulling out. And then the close-up photos that are available on my blog would pretty obviously show you which those pieces are as well, because we will color them later. So there you go, I'm pointing them out, the ones that you need to pull out and keep to the side, because we're going to inlay those back in. And then the rest of it you can just get rid of. So it's a lot of kind of weeding and taking your Spellbinder's Children one and getting all the little bits out of the die. But it's not really that hard to clean out. Okay, so here's where we need those extra pieces. So I have die cut another plane out of some silver mirror cardstock and then carefully trimmed it out from the clouds and the frame so it's a nice little separate piece. And so then you can see I've colored some of it red already and fed it into the top of the wing, the top wing. Then I colored the wheels and the propeller area with a black Sharpie. And I'm going to take those remaining 4 pieces and color them red. And so the 3 long pieces go in the bottom wings, and then that curved piece goes in the side panel of the plane. So I just took a Spectrum Noir DR5 marker and colored them, because I figured it's just easier to color with the white pieces than cut it again out of red, you know. But you could do that too. So then I'm taking some 3mm clear double-sided adhesive tape, which is super skinny, and I'm putting it behind the openings, and only the openings where we're going to inlay pieces back in. So that can be, it's a little tricky, but it's not too hard, because there are some holes that you don't want to cover in the bottom wing there. And then like this piece, it doesn't cover entirely, but it covers enough that the piece is going to stick in there without any problem. You don't have to worry that it's like the opening isn't entirely covered with adhesive. As long as you have some in there, it's going to hold those pieces in place. So you can see I'm just inlaying the little outside pieces back in, and it adds a little nice detail to this plain piece. And so then I'm going to put the red into the side panel there, and I don't really like it, so then I'm going to turn it black. I decided I'm going to turn it black. So I just take the Sharpie marker and color it black, and then feed it back into the plane once again. Okay, so now we're going to cut our layers. So here I have cut apart one of the dies into my and then stuck numbers on them, so I know which pieces of the scene are on what layer. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting off anything in the scene that I don't need per layer. So there are photos on my blog of each individual layer, but hopefully you can tell here, and there will be some part where you're going to see each layer individually, so you can tell what goes on what. So you can see there's just some little clouds on this first layer, and layer 1 is the top layer. Layer 2 is going to be the one with the plane and the clouds that kind of connect it to the circular frame. And some of these you do have to do a little bit of surgery, like you have to cut apart like these 2 clouds here. There will be a part where you have to cut apart some clouds on the bottom, I think. And it can be a little bit tricky, but just do your best to keep that circular shape even. Because the key to the shadow box working is lining up the circular shapes. So there you can see that's layer 2, the plane with the cloud. Then layer 3 is going to be the clouds in the upper right and then the lower left, I believe. And it was really kind of fun to sort of figure out which layers are going to be on what level. Does that make sense? Or what pieces are going to be what layer? And it really does make a difference when you have like sort of some tiny pieces. There's layer 3, and then some bigger pieces on each layer. And then layer 4, which is the back layer, so the one that's going to be on the back of the frame, has the cloud in the upper right and then one of the clouds in the lower left. So there you go, like that. So that is the, the surgery that you have to do on those die cuts. So there you go. Okay, so they're separated. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4. Hope that was a little fast. But on my blog, there is a photo where you can see the layers individually. Okay, so now I'm just adhering the plane, the silver plane, on top of the white plane on Shadowbox layer 2. So I've put there, so we had the 3mm adhesive on it, and then I added Zig 2A glue pen to any areas that didn't have adhesive, and I'm just carefully sticking that on top of the plane on layer 2 and then letting it dry. So now we're going to assemble the shadow box. So I'm putting 3mm adhesive on 2 back edges right along the frame opening on the back of the big black frame. And now I'm going to put a bunch of adhesive on the back of, this is layer 4, so it is the back layer in the shadow box. And then I'm going to put 6mm adhesive around the circle, because this is going to be like touching the back panel, which is the sky piece. So I'm going to set the frame on top of layer 4 there and making sure it's centered. And then I'm going to add additional 10mm adhesive all around the edges of the black frame. So you can see how much adhesive I've got on the back of this. But that's what's going to hold the back panel on and sort of keep the shadow box as one piece. So I felt like I needed a fair amount of adhesive for that. And I definitely did use a fair amount. And I will even go so far as to stick an acrylic block under the center and put a little bit of liquid glue down on the backs of those clouds so I can make sure that those adhere to the sky that's going to be on the back of the piece as well. So you can also tell that like that sky panel, a lot of it gets covered up. So if it's super splotchy, it really isn't going to be a huge problem. Like, and especially the edges don't really matter because you don't even really see them. And then I'm just going to trim off the excess from all the way around. And I did that on purpose. I made it bigger than the frame. The frame is 8x8 when it's finished because I want to just get clean edges all the way around. All right, so now here's a little bit of the tricky part. So you're going to have to trim down each of the remaining shadow box layers, so you got 3 of them left, to fit inside the frame. And that is going to be individual to each piece. They did wind up being about 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, but how you cut them and which edges you cut off it varies by panel, and you just the key to make sure is that the circles will line up with each other between the panels. The edges don't matter so much because those are going to be totally covered, but the circles need to line up. Okay, and then I'm adding foam tape, as you see, all around the inside edge of the frame and then onto the backs of the die cut pieces, like the details, so the clouds on this layer. So it's just 1 layer of foam tape on the back of this. And then I'm going to adhere all the adhesive off and then line up the circles and press it down. And then on the plane, which is the next layer, I put 2 layers of foam tape on the back of the plane, and then 1 layer around the edges of the frame so that the plane will adhere to the sky and the sides will adhere to the sides. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, line up the circle in the center. And you can see my edges aren't really lining up. And here's the last one. It has 3 layers of foam tape on the backs of the clouds and then just 1 layer of foam tape around the edges. Just press it down and you're good to go. Okay, so now we're going to cover up all the edges that maybe don't match up along the sides with this. So this is the circle from the Flying High die set, and I'm putting it cutting edge up with some paper tape on the back side, and I'm spacing it out just evenly around the circle. And then I'm going to place the wood panel that I've cut to exactly the size of the inside of the frame on top of that tape. And so it's picking up the die in exactly the right position, and then I'm just going to run it through my die cut machine. And that makes the perfectly spaced circle to fill in your frame. So yay, I'm so glad it worked. So I added 10mm and 6mm adhesive around the back of that, and then I'm adding a little bit of liquid glue just because, again, I want to get really nice coverage between the edges of the circle and the frame of on the wood panel with the white behind it. Okay, and now I decided I needed some rivets. So I grabbed some silver enamel dots that I got from Islet Outlet, and I'm putting them on each corner and in the centers so they look kind of like rivets. Then I went around all the little black folded edges and covered up any white with my black Sharpie. And then I decided I need a couple words. So I grabbed the Dream Sentiment stamp set from Elizabeth Craft Designs, and I'm going to stamp the word explore and the word believe onto this Gina K Designs red velvet cardstock in Versamark ink, and I'm going to cover it in white embossing powder and heat emboss both words. And then I'm going to trim them down into banner shapes, which you'll see in a second. So they're right there. So I let the larger letters like hang off the banners, but I cut the rest of it into like a straight banner shape, and so it's explore and believe, and I'm just sticking them into the corners with some 10mm double-sided adhesive tape, and I don't press it down too much until I get them in exactly the right position. That is the completed project, so I hope you like it. I had a lot of fun doing it. I know this video is kind of long and it seems complicated, but honestly, it really didn't take that long, and the result is pretty cool. And that frame is actually like pretty strong. I think it's going to last a long time considering it's made out of paper. And I thought this would be super cute in like a baby nursery, or if you know someone who loves vintage planes, this would be a great gift for them as well. So hopefully I've inspired you a little bit today to try out those frame dies from Elizabeth Craft Designs. They are really fun, and also how to turn a scene die into like a 3D image with some foam tape. So supplies are linked in the video description and over on my blog. Thanks so much for watching. I also encourage you to go over to the Elizabeth Craft Designs blog today and check out the other designers' projects for the Frame It Challenge. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do that as well. And if you are tempted to share this video on social media, please do so. I'd love that as well. Thanks. Have a great day.